Welcome to Ginny Greaves' Private Eye. What are the telltale signs of a murderer? When a shocking murder occurs, the same question almost always follows. Did anyone see the signs? Friends, neighbours, and colleagues often say the same thing after a crime is revealed. They seemed completely normal. Yet criminal psychologists and investigators know that, while murderers are not always easy to detect, certain behavioural patterns appear repeatedly across many cases. These are not guarantees of violence. Most people who display one or two of these traits will never commit a crime. But when investigators look back at homicide cases, the same warning signs appear again and again. Understanding them reveals as much about human psychology as it does about crime. The fascination with control. One recurring trait among many murderers is an intense need for control. Control over people, environments, or situations can become central to the offender's thinking. In domestic homicide cases, this often appears as possessive or coercive behavior within relationships. Partners may be monitored, isolated, or emotionally manipulated. When control begins to slip away, for example during separation or rejection, violence can sometimes follow. Researchers studying intimate partner violence have repeatedly found that loss of control is a powerful trigger for lethal behavior. A history of smaller offences. Many serious offenders do not begin with murder. Instead, investigators frequently discover a pattern of smaller or earlier crimes: fraud, violence, animal cruelty, stalking, or harassment. These behaviors can act as early indicators of escalating aggression or disregard for others. One example often discussed in criminology is Ted Bundy, who engaged in burglary and voyeurism long before he became known as one of the most notorious serial killers in modern history. In hindsight, these earlier offences formed part of a developing pattern. The absence of empathy. A lack of empathy is another common feature in many homicide cases. Psychologists studying violent offenders often note difficulty recognizing or caring about the emotional experiences of others. This does not always mean the person appears cold or distant. In some cases, they can appear charming, sociable, or even charismatic. But when examining their behavior more closely, investigators may find a consistent willingness to exploit or harm others without remorse. This trait appears frequently in individuals with psychopathic personality traits. Manipulation and deception. Many killers rely heavily on manipulation. They may lie convincingly, shift blame onto others, or create elaborate stories to explain suspicious behavior. In some cases, they cultivate an image of trustworthiness precisely to avoid suspicion. One notorious case in the United Kingdom involved Harold Shipman. Shipman was widely trusted by his patients and community. Yet behind this respectable appearance, he murdered hundreds of elderly patients over many years. The ability to maintain a convincing facade allowed the crimes to continue far longer than anyone initially imagined. Escalating anger or resentment. In many homicide investigations, detectives uncover a long history of unresolved anger. This anger may be directed toward a specific individual, a group of people, or society more broadly. Over time, the resentment grows stronger, sometimes becoming an obsessive focus in the offender's thinking. In extreme cases, the offender begins to justify violence as a form of revenge or correction. Psychologists refer to this as grievance-fueled violence. Isolation and secret behavior. Another recurring feature in many criminal profiles is a pattern of secrecy. Offenders may lead outwardly normal lives while hiding aspects of their behavior or personality. They may maintain secret online identities, concealed relationships, or hidden habits that those around them know nothing about. Isolation can reinforce these patterns. Without strong social ties or accountability, harmful ideas may grow unchecked. This is particularly evident in some serial offenders who manage to live ordinary lives while concealing violent activities for years. Why predicting murder is so difficult? Despite these warning signs, predicting murder remains extremely difficult. Many people display one or more of these behaviors without ever becoming violent. Human psychology is complex, and most individuals experiencing anger, resentment, or social isolation never harm anyone. This is why investigators rarely identify a killer before the crime occurs. Instead, these patterns usually become clear only in hindsight, once detectives reconstruct the offender's behavior and history. The uncomfortable truth. The idea that murderers can always be recognized in advance is largely a myth. In reality, many violent offenders appear ordinary, even respectable, until their crimes come to light. The warning signs are often subtle, scattered across years of behavior, rather than obvious in a single moment. But by studying patterns across many cases, criminologists and psychologists can begin to understand how violence develops, and why some individuals cross the line from anger or resentment into lethal action. Because while the perfect disguise may hide a killer for a time, human behavior almost always leaves traces. Bye for now, Ginny.